Donald Trump. Punk tunes with a metallic edge. Songs inspired by Donald Trump. Ballads. Donald Trump. Anything else? Yeah, but there's a lot about the Trump. Understood. Sum 41 are back with album number 7. 7. Order in Decline. Okay, so Order in Decline is the band's 7th studio album, and it's their follow-up to 2016's 13 Voices. Now, as you probably realise from my hilarious introduction sequence, there's quite a lot about Mr. Trump in this album, the lyrics are inspired by it anyway. But I just quickly wanted to read out something the frontman Derek Whibley had to say. The last thing I wanted to do was write a social or political protest record, and Order in Decline is not that. It's also very hard to not have feelings about everything that's going on in the world. From what I've read in interviews, it doesn't sound like he set out to write a political record by any means, but I think sometimes you just put pen to paper and whatever comes out, comes out. What was once in is now out. Now, I've never been a huge fan of the pop punk bands, though I have listened to my fair share of Green Day in my day. But of them all, I've always found Sum 41 to be the most enjoyable. I think it's fair to say that one of the main reasons for that is nostalgia. There was definitely a fun period for me back in the early aughties when I was living with my good friend Ross Corson and Mark Anthony Lawrence Taylor. Rest in peace, Mark. You will always be missed. Guess it just reminds me of sort of better times. Not that things are that bad right now, but you know, could always be better, couldn't I? Just a brief mention, if you like these videos, make sure you like. If you are subscribed, maybe try doing that bell icon thing to make sure you never miss out on any of... Oh, God. Well, I'm fresh out of fudges to give. Let's review. First song on the album is Turning Away. Starts out with a piano-led intro, and I have to say that I found this song to be a little underwhelming at first, but things do pick up really nicely for the choruses. I'm turning away because I feel like I can't go on when we're living in this lie. And when all of my faith is gone, I don't even want to try. There's nothing you could say that could ever change my mind. And with all these steps I take, it's giving me back my life. As I said, really enjoyed the choruses on this one. Not a terrible song, but I think it's worth mentioning that there was a really nice guitar solo in there as well. Not bad. Next up is the first single, Out for Blood. Things get much heavier on this one with some metal-fused punk riffage. And speaking of which, the riff kind of reminds me a little bit of Vanilla Radio by the Wild Hearts. Not exactly, just the vibe, you understand. All that we have is just slipping away, and I don't believe that it's gonna be okay. You can't stop the bleeding, it's almost too late! You're leaving us all behind, with hell to pay. This is another one that had a really decent guitar solo thrown in there as well, and I really enjoyed this song. I could really see this one going down great live. Next up we have The New Sensation. I found that this one had a touch of Muse, which I have no issue with. Proceed. And more than a hint of Green Day's Holiday. Green Day's Holiday? Is that a thing? Definitely a political slant to this one, methinks. The days get stranger, the pain gets greater. It's the human nature, the sun's in my eye. Or am I insane? The confrontation across this nation. The new sensation. Tell me who's to blame. Not a bad song, but one that kind of passed me by, I found. Next up we have A Death in the Family. Another one with much fatter, heavier sounding guitars. A great energy to this song with more metal thrown in, as well as some more melodic moments. I assume this is another political tune. I know fudge all about the ticks of Poll. You better pray for your commiseration. You're almost out of time. Just a warning. Your fate is left to a different generation. You know they won't be kind. I have to say that I enjoyed this song a lot. I haven't really heard the band for years, probably since the early aughties when I was still vaguely young. But I always thought they were a solid band, and Derek in particular I thought was a very good songwriter, and it's nice to see that that's continued and there's more of a maturity to what they're doing now as well. It's kind of nice to... There's definitely a difference in the sound. Next up we have Heads Will Roll. There was a real bounce and swagger to this one, and it kind of reminded me a little of the vibe of the Beatles' Come Together. Derek informs us, but now you don't want to make me lose my shit, 'cause heads will roll. Well, I'll bear that in mind. An okay song. Next up we have 45, A Matter of Time. A very cool sounding metal riff opens this one up before going into more familiar territory. And I've got a feeling that this one might be yet another political one. I believe that I am losing faith in all of humankind. Nearly fell then. But then I realise it's plain to see that a number, there's a fly, that a number is all you are to me. The number 45 in the title, of course, referring to the fact that Donald Trump is the 45th president. Did you look that up online? Yeah, I did. Next track is called Never There. The ballad of the album, this is definitely a very personal one. Derek actually stated that this one is about his father, who he has never met. I'll just quickly read out something that he said about this one. I never wanted to write this song. It just kind of poured out of me. I tried to fight it at first, but there was no stopping it. I don't need you by my side. I think by now I'm doing fine. Myself on my own. And I feel you time to time like you're sending out a sign. I can tell you're not alone. A very heartfelt song with Derek being completely honest and wearing his heart on his sleeve. I'm always a sucker for these kind of songs. Next up we have Eat You Alive. Starts out with a guitar tone that wouldn't be out of place on a doom metal album, and the riff itself has a slight reminiscence to Mastodon's Iron Tusk, though nowhere near as heavy, to be fair. You always got to pray for the pessimist, and these days seeing the strangest resistance, that's the best I could do. Now make way and obey all the best of us, before they just eat you alive. Yeah, not a bad tune this one. I really enjoyed the guitars in particular. Off. What the are you doing? Just narrowly avoided an attack by a bee, and sounds like there's some sort of runners group going on. Just unbelievable. Penultimate song, at least on the standard edition, The People Verses. Bit more of a speed metal vibe to this tune. Add to that some old school punk and some lyrics about the Trumpster, and we've got ourselves a rocking tune. I know a bad man when I see his face. He is the bad man, but I've got faith. To end this misery, he has to go. All I know, this is no life for me. I really enjoyed this one. Good job, lads. Seriously though, this was probably my favourite song on the album. And the final song on the album is Catching Fire. A much more atmospheric song, this one, and I was reminded of Richard Curtis era Joy Division for some reason. Probably because the sounds you heard made you think those thoughts. Now, according to an interview I read, Derek was writing the lyrics to this song around about the time that Anthony Bourdain took his life. I think it was maybe a year previously that we lost Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington to suicide also. At the same time as this, apparently Derek's wife was out of town. She was away. Probably best if I actually quote his own words. It's about how I couldn't even imagine what I would do if I lost my wife. But now I'm here alone, without you by my side. If only I had known that you kept it all inside. Now I'm trying to understand, just trying to find a way. But forgive you, I just can't. It's all just too much for me to take. I think this one is a really good indication as well of just what a good songwriter, lyricist Derek actually is. Really decent close to the album. Now it's also worth pointing out as well that there's a deluxe edition of this album which has 2 bonus tracks, and they were acoustic versions of, what was it, Heads Will Roll and Catching Fire. In terms of a score, I'd give this album a 7 out of 10. I enjoyed this album far more than I expected to. It's been many years since I've listened to Sum 41, even though I've got no real issue with the band whatsoever. And while some of the songs did pass me by a little, there's definitely a lot to enjoy on this album. They've definitely evolved as a band. This is definitely a heavier album than a lot of stuff they've done previously. There's some really great riffs in this. Some of the guitar tones were particularly enjoyable. I thought Derek's songwriting was great. I thought his voice sounded great. There were some other guys playing on the album as well. I should really have mentioned them really, but just go and check it out. I'm sure other reviewers will do it. 7 out of 10, solid album. Definitely think there's some stuff on here that you guys would enjoy. Well done, guys. So that's me done for another video. I'm hoping to get a review out of Sabaton's new album, The Great War, but also Rosalie Cunningham has an album coming out next week. If you did like this video, make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you share, and make sure you subscribe. So it really does help, god damn it. I think I'll just end there.